Okay, this is a kind of specific video about taking the Clipper ferry from Victoria to Seattle on the end of my bike trip that was like a 3-week long tour, details of which are linked in my Instagram story highlights, and I will try to post some video to my channel as well. To be honest, it's hard to do both, but I did want to speak to anyone who might be Googling the logistics of taking your bike on this ferry because it was actually a really great experience. So thought I would show you what it's like. So I was just going one way from Victoria to Seattle. So I rolled up to the Victoria terminal and started taking some of the stuff off of my bike. Now, I had read online that you had to take everything off of your bike in person. That turned out not to be true. Thank goodness. I kind of looked at what was on my bike and decided to only take off the items that could maybe fall off, and they were fine with that. So once I had my boarding pass and my ticket all squared away, you tag the bike, and basically, as long as nothing was going to come off of it, they just rolled it off just like that. So I had my tent and my shoes, basically any kind of extra items or items that might look kind of loose. Really nothing was loose, but I took those things with me as my carry-on, as you can see here. And I said goodbye to Victoria, which is an amazing city for biking, by the way, but that's for another video. So I boarded the ship. All of your carry-on luggage goes in the middle of this Clipper ferry, and that is where I put my tent and my helmet to kind of keep it out of the way because I didn't have much room at my seat. And because it was the middle of a holiday weekend, the seats were not that full, so I actually moved my seat later. And then once I cleared customs, my bike was waiting for me just past all of everybody else's luggage, and everything just went really smoothly. I guess what made me nervous about this ferry was that it involved a border crossing and I had to hand my bike over, but in the end, there was nothing to worry about. So that was my experience. Overall, very positive one. I did want to mention a couple of other things, and one is that this clipper is pretty expensive. I paid $145 for my ticket. That's a one-way ticket, so if you're doing round trip, it's going to be even more. And then I paid $20 for my bike. But because I didn't want to spend the time to ride down through the San Juan Islands, I'd done that before. I wanted to maximize my time in Canada before coming down to Seattle, where I was flying home from. The logistics just made it make sense to pay for this ferry. It was a passenger-only ferry, which was different than getting on the other ferries in the San Juan Islands and the Vancouver Island area. Those ferries are also really cool. You bring your bike on with you. You can see them in my Instagram story highlights from this trip especially. I got on a lot of ferries back and forth, and a lot of those ferries are like $10 round trip or in that ballpark. So that is definitely a thing to consider, would be the price. The other thing that I wasn't sure about the day of is when I needed to get there. So what I did was for a 5 o'clock departure, I rode downtown and I think I arrived at the terminal around 1 just to check in and say, hey, I have a bike, because on the internet it said that a space for your bike isn't guaranteed, and that kind of freaked me out. So I went down there, I said, hey, I have a bike, I want to go ahead and pay for it. And the staff was super nice and they walked me through everything. And I paid for it and I wrote out like a form that is basically a liability waiver saying that I understand that my bike could be damaged, the typical stuff that you have to do when you travel with your bike. And then they told me to come back around 4:15 for the 5 o'clock departure, which I did. And I just kind of did my bike check-in, got the tag for it, and then I walked on just like other passengers on the ferry. So hopefully I covered everything. If I forgot something or you just have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. Thanks.